a man who is very committed to the university, someone who's done a lot for the university as a whole, for the program that he was a part of. He's a 1973 graduate, a JU soccer alum. I'd like to welcome today on Dolphin Tales, Mr. Frank Pace. Noticing a trend as we've gone through Dolphin Tales, and I think what we're noticing is if you want to be a producer, you have to play soccer at JU. We've had Dove Ribnick on, who is a JU soccer alum. We had Alex Boylan on last episode, and
That's
now
correct.
We've got you. So I guess the path to becoming a producer, play soccer at JU. Is that right?
It works. It worked for me anyway.
I definitely want to get into that in a second. I guess to frame the interview, I want to just give a quick bio, and luckily the soccer program did my work for me since you just addressed them. Certainly something we can talk about, but they put up some of your stats, I guess, and a little bit of your bio. So I know you were a 4-year goalkeeper for the university, got a degree in business, and then went on to become a television producer, producing more than 700 network TV episodes, which I'd love to get into. And you were also on the board of trustees from 2007 to 2016. Right. And you also answered question Jacksonville Who, which is the documentary on Amazon. With all that said, Frank, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself in your own words?
Well, I got to JU in 68, and I graduated in 72. I actually crammed 4.5 years of learning into 4. Or opposite way, I crammed 4.5 years into 4 years into 4.5 years learning. I was from White Plains, New York, and I came down because I wanted the warm weather. I wanted out of New York, where I was born and raised. When I got to Jacksonville, the smell of the paper mill hung heavy in the air, and there was so much hyacinth on the river, you almost could look like you could walk across it. Do you know what hyacinth is?
No.
Oh, hyacinth is really thick grass that floats down the river. And there was so much hyacinth floating down the river that it was amazing. It literally looked like you could walk across the river on the hyacinth. I played, as I said, I played soccer. As you said, I played soccer and baseball, majored in business. And I made a lot of friends there that are friends to this day. It was really a great experience for me. It even got greater in my sophomore year when Artis and Pembroke joined the basketball team. And that gave me a great experience that I never could have had before. Because up until that time, I really thought that people that came from little places couldn't do big things. And then when the basketball team went all the way to the national championship game, they showed me what little people from small towns could do. And we were the little engine that could in a lot of ways. And that year also, our soccer team went 15-0-1. So it was a good year at JU.
Good year for the program. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's talk about the time period there. Like I said, you did the Jacksonville Who documentary. Again, it's on Amazon. For anyone, prospective, current, or alumni, it's something that you should definitely watch. A lot of people know about that period, maybe very generally speaking. I remember when I came on my recruiting trip, they talked about that basketball team. And it's obviously a big part of the legacy. Artis is still around the university, which is great. But, having gone through it, not just hearing the stories, why don't you talk a little bit about that time period, both just what was going on in the world and specifically what was going on in the university?
Well, also, I want to say it's also now it's on YouTube. So
okay,
if anybody clicks in and watches Jacksonville Who, ? In the search engine, it'll come up. And I think it's better on YouTube than on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
So there were some audio problems, I guess, on Amazon Prime, but we got it worked out on YouTube. So 68, 72. I'll tell you how the project came about. A JU alum named Steve Broder was at JU at the same time. He grew up down in the beach area, and he lived in LA now. He still lives in LA now, and he approached me about doing a movie about JU basketball team. And I said, no, I didn't think there was enough of a story there. I said, come back in 6 months if you have something. Well, he came back in 6 months and he said, I said no again. But in the intervening time, I considered whether there was another story. And there was another story of racial injustice. And by combining the two of those together, with JU having 3 blacks players on the basketball team, when the entire SEC conference only had 1 black in total, that made a big difference to me. So that made me want to do the movie, because I could tell 2 stories at the same time. I could tell a story of the Jacksonville racial injustice, and then I could tell a story of the remarkable achievements of the basketball team.
And again, it's an excellent documentary. Just the story, and like you said, you tell about everything that was going on, around the country, within Jacksonville, and then the story of that team and how it came together. And there's some, I'm not going to give too many spoilers, but there's some things in it that I learned that were pretty fascinating. So I know you're still very good friends with artists and keep up with him. And so I guess let's get into, like you said, just little people doing big things. Just like that team that came from a little no-name school. Talk to me a little bit about, so you're playing soccer, you're playing baseball. At what point did you say, I want to be a producer?
Well, before we do that, I want to go into the time period. I want to address the question you asked me originally. I learned a lot of things that I couldn't use in the documentary because there's only so much time, and you only got so much time to tell stories. But in '68, there was still segregation in Jacksonville. The high schools hadn't been integrated. So when Chipper Dublin came in the fall of '67, I believe. Yes, fall of '67. He was the first guy ever to integrate the JU basketball team. Take UCLA, for example. That was 1967. UCLA was integrated in 1927. So they had, 67 minus 27 is what? 40-year head start on JU in integrating basketball, and California had 40-year head start on Florida on integrating their school system. I mean, some of those guys, Pembroke said he never saw a white player in high school. They played against all black teams. Rusty Baldwin said he never saw a black player on other teams that he played. So there was a lot of racial injustice. One interesting thing I found out, that in 1964, the Beatles were scheduled to play a concert in the Gator Bowl. They found out that the blacks and whites were supposed to be segregated in the stands, and they refused to play the concert unless the contract was rewritten that said the crowd would be integrated. So they rewrote the contract, and they played a concert in Jacksonville in 1964, which was the first time there was an integrated crowd in Jacksonville.
Wow.
Where are you from, Scott? Pat?
I'm from Southwest Florida. So yeah, I came up here in 2000 and back and forth, but have been here pretty much since.
Great. So that's a little bit more about the background. And also I found out about the Axe Handle Saturday, which was a brutal time in Jacksonville. People collected down by Morrison's Cafeteria in Hemming Square, and they just beat the crap out of black people with axe handles. It was a terrible day.
Yeah, and I know you get into that and actually interview people that were part of that event, and with everything going on right now in the world. I know that was a big talking point, both with the university and around Jacksonville. So again, if people really want to get the background on that, as well as just that time period, again, it's a huge part of the legacy of the university. So So what else from the documentary? I mean, again, people know that, the team went to the finals and it was a big turning point. I think we can all agree for the university, but what are some of the big takeaways that you have from doing that project that maybe, a current student wouldn't know, just because they weren't around for it?
Well, the reason I did the documentary is because an inordinate amount of members of that team have passed away. Vaughn Wedeking, Danny Hawkins, Chipper Dublin, at least 5 members of that team have passed away. And since we did the documentary, Dr. Ken Selke has passed away. And I wanted to record a legacy of that team before it was too late. So the great thing is that we all got to I brought everybody into Jacksonville. We all actually in 2000, what year was the hurricane, the big hurricane that hit JU? 2016. Yeah. I believe. I brought everybody in Jacksonville about 2 days after the hurricane hit. Actually, JU was closed. President Koss allowed me to use the university anyway, and he gave up his office for an interview with artists where we had some external outdoor interviews set up. But the fact that all of those guys got together in Jacksonville, some of them hadn't seen each other in 48 years, was incredible to me. And that was a marvelous feeling of satisfaction for me as a filmmaker.
That's incredible. So you talked about coming to Jacksonville, and that's, again, one of those other themes that we're seeing is a lot of people from up north coming down because the weather, the beaches, and all that. So was it a soccer decision? Was it an academic decision? What really, solidified your decision to come to the university?
Well, I love the late Fran Kinney. And Fran Kinney used to take me to task for saying this, but I came to Jacksonville University because they accepted me. That plus the weather and the possibility of playing soccer encouraged my admissions to Jacksonville University. But the fact that they accepted me played a big fact because I was not a great student in high school. I was a C student, C plus student. And the fact that Jacksonville accepted me and showed faith in my ability to perform in the college classroom went a long way as far as my career development as well.
Oh, that's a great answer.
But Fran used to kick my butt. She said, "Frank, don't you say that." I said, "Fran, it's true."
That's I'm sure the academic standards have gotten a lot tighter since then. So
there is no doubt that I couldn't get into JU today. JU's becomes, and I know this from having been on the admissions committee of the Board of Trustees, JU has gotten so rigorous in its academics that it really makes me proud. I mean, I'm really proud of the great school that JU has become.
So, we talked a little bit about soccer and obviously being part of a great program then. And then we also share something in common. And both of us played baseball at JU as well. So I've got to ask about, your famous baseball story that you told me.
Well, I was a pretty good goalkeeper. I was voted the most valuable defensive player my senior year. And it's an award I took seriously. On JU, I wasn't so good. Barry Myers was the baseball coach then, and I believe him and Bill Coulthard got together, and we didn't have spring soccer at that time. We had fall soccer, and then you would go into spring baseball season. So a lot of us played dual sports. I believe Coulthard went to Barry Myers and said, "Look, he's a big part of my team. Can you take him on a team, keep him out of trouble?" So, and I was blessed with the kind of arm that I could throw batting practice every day. So I basically went out for the baseball. I was on the baseball team. Barry kept me as the 25th man, and I pretty much threw batting practice every day. I never got a sore arm or anything. So came time for me to get into a game, and I got into a game as a pitcher in the 9th inning of a game that we were winning 13-0. I guess Barry felt, what the hell? I got nothing to lose. I could throw him out there, give him an inning or so, and we'll see how he does. Well, right before I got to pitch, Guy Ezel, who was a big, burly player, who was a great player. He played Double-A baseball for the Oakland A's, as a matter of fact. And he was a power hitter and an outfielder. He moved my foot position on the mound. So I went out there trying to work on what Guy told me instead of just throwing the ball over the plate. Well, I couldn't hit a bull in the ass with a base fiddle. I walked a couple of guys. I gave up a couple of hits. It was soon 13-4 when I hear Barry Myers yell out, "Keep it up, Pace. You'll send them home happy yet." And that was Coach Myers. You know, when we played baseball, there was no stands. There was not. It was a chain link fence in the outfield, and there were bleachers, a small set of bleachers for both teams to sit on. So we have none of the advantages that the current teams got today. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's been an amazing transformation, even since I was there, to see, Southern Oak and what they've done there, and at the baseball field and the stadiums, and just the whole campus has just taken this rise in the way it looks, the way it feels, and the amenities and what they have available. It's pretty impressive.
I'll tell you a quick story about Barry Myers. Another story about Barry Myers. He used to sit on the bench, and he just used to, he used to yell out colloquialisms like, the Jaguars had a PA announcer named Jeff Robinson, I believe, or in the 80s. Anyway, Robinson's brother went to JU. He was a big lumbering first baseman, and he was trying to beat out a ball in the infield, and Barry Myers yells out, "Robinson, you run down the first base line like a one-legged piss ant trying to stomp out a forest fire." That was Barry Myers. And he had this habit of, whenever he had to argue with an umpire, he would get right up into his face, and then he would, at the last moment, turn around like this, and he would argue with his back to the umpire. And Coach Myers was a beauty. He went on to coach, I guess. He was probably coaching at Mercer when you played against Mercer.
Okay. I'm not sure.
And he's in the Mercer Hall of Fame.
Wow.
So
was it an effective technique, though, to turn your back to the ump?
It was hilarious because the umpires caught on, and the umpires would walk away, and Barry would be standing there arguing with himself.
He was just ahead of his time. It was social distancing. It's safety protocols.
He was ahead of his time, that's for sure.
So let's talk a little bit about, again, this trend that we're seeing. So apparently, if you want to be a producer, you play soccer, and then you just become a producer, right? That's all there is to it.
That's almost true. JU has made a big impact in the Hollywood community. My best friend Jay Thomas was a 2-time Emmy Award-winning actor. He starred in Cheers. He starred in Murphy Brown. He starred in Mr. Holland's Opus. If you're not familiar with Jay, I just watch Mr. Holland's Opus. You will be blown away. Jay is a JU graduate. Bruce Helford created Drew Carey Show, created George Lopez, worked on Roseanne. Multiple guy. He's 73 years old. He'll work as long as he works. He's there. He's there and working. Bill Hill would introduce me to the choreography coach, Carrie Coble at JU. And Carrie's had a number of students that she has sent to me, and are now working in college. Melissa Thrasher is a very successful producer, director out here in Los Angeles. Steve Broder, as I mentioned, very successful radio jingle writer. Terrence Mann, who went to JU, originated the role of Beast in Beauty and the Beast on Broadway. Very successful actor. I mean, JU has got a terrific litany of people. I'll tell you a story. When Bruce Helford and I've worked for Bruce 3 times now on shows. When he and I discovered we both went to JU at the same time, he said, I'm from Florida. Oh, I said, I went to school in Florida. He said, me too. He said, where'd you go to school? I said, Jacksonville University. He said, me too. When were you there? I said, when Artist was there. He said, me too. He said, I can't believe you didn't see any of my plays. I was in a lot of plays. I said, how many of my soccer games did you go to? He said, fair enough. But we were out here working for 15 years. Didn't even know each other. And if I had known he was a JU graduate, I would have called him immediately. Alex Boylan, JU graduate.
There you go.
Bob Ribnick, JU graduate. So, JU has got as rich a history in film and television as many schools that are making their bones on films and TV schools.
There you go. Well, that's the point of this segment on Dolphin Tales, is to hopefully highlight some of these people that have gone on to do incredible things, both at the university and professionally. So let's talk a little bit about that path. I mean, so you finish up, and I know a lot of people that we've talked to have had different stories. Some knew right away this is what they wanted to do. Some people have tried out different things and realized the corporate world wasn't for them. So what drove you to do this, and how did you start in the film industry?
Well, first of all, I was very lucky. And anybody that is successful and doesn't attribute a good portion of their success to luck is a liar. And I'll just be blatant. I talked about that a little bit in my book, If These Lips Could Talk, which is available this week on Amazon. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I left JU. I got an indication of what I wanted to do in high school, and at JU gave me the opportunity to work on that craft, not knowing that I was working on the craft. I had written for the school newspaper in the last half of my high school senior year, and a teacher, Irene Willis, noticed something that nobody else had noticed in me before, that I actually had some ability to write. So at JU, college is an opportunity for you to try stuff and do stuff badly, because you have a 4-year window to experiment, to try stuff, to find out what you like, to find out what you're good at, find out what you don't look good at. So I wrote for the school newspaper. I wrote for the yearbook committee. I was practicing my writing, and I was writing some articles I read now I cringe at, but some I saw what Mrs. Willis saw in high school, and that encouraged me to continue that pursuit. So I wanted to try to be a PR guy. So I got into PR first for the Southern California Sun of the World Football League. And I met with a general manager named Curly Morrison, who is a great football player at Ohio State. He was the general manager of the team, and he said, "Well, I can work you, but I can't pay you." So I said, "Fine, I'll work for 30 days for free. After 30 days, you either hire me or you fire me." After 30 days, he did neither, but he got me a job with the Portland Storm, and I went up there and I became PR director for the Portland Storm for half a year until they ran out of money. And then I jumped to the Chicago Winds for the second season, and they ran out of money. So I decided that that sports wasn't the kind of career that I wanted to be into. There was too many intangibles, too many ownerships. I mean, look at Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers just got fired yesterday or whenever this, I'm not sure when this is going to air, but he just got fired recently. And, he's had a long, great career, but still, I wanted more stability in my life. I kept working in PR, and I went to work for a company in San Diego called the Phillips Organization, which was a small advertising and public relations firm specializing in sporting goods. Their biggest account was Echelon, and there I hired a young writer by the name of Armin Katayan, who is now above buildings. Armin wrote the Tiger Woods book. Armin's had been a contributor to 60 Minutes. And he and I collectively started working in television because in 1979, a person by the name of Bill Rasmussen we were trying to get racquetball on television. This is probably a boring story, but I'll go through it anyway. We were trying to get racquetball on television, and Bill Rasmussen came to my office in San Diego, and he said, "I'm starting a new network, and my network is going to be 24 hours television, and we would like to put your program on the network." And I said, "Well, what's the name of the network?" And he said, "The Entertainment and Sports Programming Network, ESPN." So I took a rider with ESPN, and I started producing racquetball for television, and later a short course triathlon series called the Ironman Bud Light Echelon, the Bud Light Speedo. Speedo was another one of my clients. Speedo Bud Light Triathlon Series. And that series became an Olympic sport, and it still is an Olympic sport today. So from there, I was working on an account for Pony Shoes, Pony Athletic Shoes, which is a long forgotten shoe company, but was in the fight with Adidas, Nike, Converse, New Balance, Pony to be the number one shoe of the 80s. And when I was going to the studios and giving out free shoes. And I went to see a show called Bay City Blues, and I went to talk to the director of that, and the director said, "I need a baseball consultant as well. Do you know anybody?" And I said, "Me." And I walked through the door, and I just kept walking ever since.
There you go. So I know you've been part of some very well-known shows. And so if you want to toot your horn a little bit and, what are some of the things besides ESPN? What are some other things that people might know that you've been part of?
Well, as I mentioned, my friend Armin was a graduation speaker at JU in 2010, 2011. So that's how some of folks may know Armin as well. But I did a show called Head of the Class, which stayed on the air for 5 years. I did a show called, what else did I do? I did a show called Something Wilder, Daddy Dearest, starring Don Rickles. I did Suddenly Susan, starring Brooke Shields. Brooke, by the way, wrote the forward for my book. Well, I just exposed myself on how that thing is standing on the wall. I did George Lopez show. I did Murphy Brown. I did the original Murphy Brown in '88 and went back in 30 years later, did the follow-up version. I did Shake It Up, which was a show which starred Zendaya and Bella Thorne. Zendaya just won an Emmy for the Best Dramatic Actress. And I did a show called Girl Meets World, which was an offshoot of Boy Meets World, which was a big hit during the 90s. And I've done 4 movies, including Babe Ruth, which starred my very good friend Stephen Lang. And Stephen was the graduation speaker in maybe 2012.
There you go. That's fantastic. Excuse me. Well, you've talked a little bit about the book, and I know you have a podcast as well. So want to dig into it quickly. Like you said, book is out this week. So probably it's been out for about a week or so when people are watching this episode. What's the book all about?
Well, the book is about my experiences as a producer, people that I've worked with. It's not about me. It's about people I've worked with and my experience with those people. It includes stories about John Wayne, Donald Trump, Sylvester Stallone. I'm trying to read over my shoulder. But Jay Thomas, of course, Don Rickles, Frank Sinatra, Candace Bergen. It talks about my experiences with all these people. Some good, some not good. Thus the name, If These Lips Could Talk. These lips are finally talking.
And they're doing that on the podcast as well. And how often are you putting that out?
Wait.
Oh, there it is. Product placement. I like it.
we do a show every Saturday on all social media platforms. It's a live show. It's a 4-camera video show. We switch feeds. We bring in guests from all over the country. This week coming up, we'll have a famous director, Joel Zwick, whose experiences go back to Laverne and Shirley, and feature experiences. He directed My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which was the #1 independent movie of all time. Next week, we're having Tony O, who is a Frank Sinatra, Don Rickles confidant. And he tells us some wild stories. In upcoming weeks, we're going to have Mary McNamara, a Pulitzer Prize winner from the LA Times, and we'll have Molly Ann Brasigliano, who is the queen of sports cards and sports collectibles. So we're trying to get a diverse lineup of people. One thing we don't talk about is we don't talk politics.
There you go.
So that'll
probably smart.
Yes, we figured. Either way, we're going to alienate half of our audience, so we don't want to alienate anybody.
We do the same thing here. So, and I know you recently had artists on as well. I got to watch that one after you and I spoke originally.
Yeah,
it's a great interview, and they're long interviews, so you really get into a lot of detail, a lot of great stories. So definitely, I'll put a link in when I share this out. So people can go check you out as well.
Upcoming on a 9/11 show, my co-writer, Billy O'Connor, is an interesting guy. He was a drug addict. He was an alcoholic. He was a bar owner. He was a Vietnam vet. And for 20 years, 20 proudest years of his life, he was a New York City firefighter and was a first responder at 9/11. At the age of 58, he decided, what am I doing with myself? He had been retired from the fire department, and he had not gone to college. At 58, he enrolled in the University of Florida, got his degree in journalism, and at 62 years old, he became a journalist and a stand-up comic. He hasn't had a drink in 15 years. He's just a fascinating person and a great writer. So my point in bringing up Billy was he was a first responder at 9/11. We did a 9/11 show, which I invite anybody to watch because our previous podcasts are all archived on YouTube and Facebook. We had Billy on, and we had 2 other first responders who were captains at 9/11. And it was a remarkable, ripping, moving story. And when I was in New York doing Murphy Brown, I had a lot of time on my hands on the weekends because my family was in Los Angeles. So I went down to the 9/11 memorial. and I went into the museum, I recommend it for anybody. I mean, it's a sobering experience for anybody who's ever been alive, and I'm at a loss for words. It was just a very, very moving experience, and my heart goes out to the many people that died and the many firefighters who are still dying to this day, because I think there were like 250,000 contaminants released into the air that day. And I remember one of the firefighters said, whenever we got a phone call, it used to be a pause for a cause to celebration. It used to be somebody retired or somebody was getting a medal. But now the phone rings and I automatically assume it's another person passing away. So 9/11 is still having an effect today, but it's a great experience for anybody. And on November, the week following Veterans Day, we're going to have, Billy was a Vietnam vet. We're going to have a retired general and a retired lieutenant colonel on to talk about Veterans Day, the experiences that means to us. I'm a part of the Vietnamese era. I didn't have bone spurs, but I got out of the military because I had a bad wrist. And ironically, I broke my wrist in a soccer game that I was supposed to not be playing soccer in one of those spring games where I was supposed to be playing baseball. Barry Myers gave us a Saturday off. So I went down to the University of Florida and played in a city league game or an amateur game. And I broke my wrist, and that kept me out of the service. It also kept me from throwing batting practice for the rest of the year.
The 9/11 stories that you're talking about, my wife and I were just talking about that, and how, to us, it's a very weird thing to realize that the students that are at JU now were either not born or just born. And so for them to not really understand the impact that had on so many of us. And, it's one of those things, like I remember growing up, people talking about, where were you when JFK was shot? And everyone knew. And I just always thought that was weird that people would know where they were. And I know exactly where I was. I was on campus. I was down in the housing office with my roommate talking about just moving some stuff around. And the lady sent us back to our rooms. And we watched it on TV in our dorm room. I was at JU. And so it's very important, I think, to continue to tell those stories for the people that, were either babies or were not alive when that happened. So I applaud you guys for doing that. And I think it's something that people absolutely should watch.
Well, it's incredible to me to realize how many people weren't alive the last time a man walked on the moon. You weren't alive.
What?
It's been almost 50 years since man walked on the moon. And my two good friends, Mag Scott, who was a JU graduate, who I was on the board of trustees with, and her husband, David Scott, was on Apollo, was the first man to drive on the moon. And that's the type of people that we have associated with JU. But to think that David's now 88 and walked on the moon and drove on the moon, it's incredible for me to know that with all of our technical capabilities, we haven't put a man on the moon since. Apollo 17, Gene Cernan was the last man to walk on the moon. Do you know Gene Cernan's name? No,
I don't.
No. You know the name of the first man to walk on the moon, right?
Sure, of course. It's it's like you said. We're in such amazing company with the alumni that are out there, university wide, but also for our purposes here on Dolphin Tales in the athletic department. And so the more that we can tell these kind of stories and introduce people to people like you, Frank, I think it's important, because all of these individual stories are what make the university so special. It's what draws people. It's what keeps people connected to the university. And like you said, you go through and you make friends and you make lifelong friends. So it really is just an incredible environment and experience.
Yeah. And I will tell you that if it wasn't for people like Tim Cost, Chris Sapienza, who's now the provost, who's become a very good friend, and the board of trustees, those are the people that made Jacksonville Who a reality. Because Tim was, I call him Tim, well, you call him President Cost, but Tim was so terrifically supportive of us. And the board of trustees, many of who went to other schools, people like Peter Galoni, Steve Kegler, Andy Moran's a JU graduate, but they were board of trustees people, and I had to drum up the money to do Jacksonville Who. I didn't make a penny on Jacksonville Who. I did it as a labor of love because I wanted the story out there. But those trustees, Chuck Woodhouse, John Harrison, those trustees allowed me, they donated the money. I'll let you know how much it was. They donated $250,000 to allow me to make that movie. And with the help of the JU people in Los Angeles, I was able to make a movie that should have cost $600,000 for $250,000 just because of the support of people like Peter Galoni, who went to Fordham, Steve Kegler, who went to another place out of JU. So Chuck Woodhouse, who went to University of Virginia. All of those people helped Jacksonville University become what Jacksonville University has become. So, again, good. That's great, Frank. Good for them.
Absolutely. For them. Well, Frank, I can't thank you enough for coming by. I want to, again, thank you for being on the show. Absolutely, everyone who's watching this, go pick up "If These Lips Could Talk" by our own Frank Pace. Good luck.
By the way, there's a great story, and I'm going to talk about to the soccer team, or I've already talked to the soccer team. But there's a great story about, I coached high school soccer for 15 years. And there's a great story on how our soccer team became the #1 team in the nation. And it's a little bit off task, but it'll tell you a little about the kind of people that I'm drawn to, the kind of people that I work with, the kind of people that I love. And that's what this book is all about. So please pick up a copy of the book if you can, and watch on Saturdays.
There you go.
A Mick, a Mook, and a Mike is the name of the podcast.
There you go, Frank. Well, Frank, thank you again for coming on. Next time you're in town, please stop by. We're going to bring the show on campus now that things are getting a little bit more settled on campus. So next time you're in town, you're always welcome back, and hopefully we can talk about the success of the book and anything else.
With that, I'll say, see you next time.